Welcome into Blues Hub postgame for another exciting Blues victory, fifth in a row as they defeat the Chicago Blackhawks 4-1. Blues Hub postgame brought to you by Hot Shots, St. Louis home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Jacob Stanoch alongside Thomas Welch. And Thomas, this was a game that I started off thinking this is going to be a post-game show where it's just me for 30 minutes complaining about how bad the Blues were again, and that they can't be doing this against a team who is literally last in the league, out of the playoffs already. But they somehow find a way to, even in the ugly games, get a win. And third period was actually very well put together. But I would like to see beginning to end Blues maybe a little bit more complete through 60. But what did you see from today's win?
Yeah, I think you explained it best. Obviously we would love for the Blues to come out and dominate every game, but it looked like early that wasn't the Blues that we saw. It's a little bit of a different atmosphere than the game we saw against the Vancouver Canucks, because obviously the Chicago Blackhawks aren't not pushing for a playoff spot, and they've kind of been in the cellar of the standings for the entire season. So it's easy for a team to kind of come in there and take the gas off a little bit. I don't think the Blues consciously were. I'm sure in the locker room they're like, we can't take advantage of this matchup that we have in front of us with the Blackhawks and the Predators back to back. Like, those are points on the board and crucial points in the playoff standings that you have to go and take advantage of. But like you said, it was kind of lackluster off the start. Joel Hofer was tested a lot, and credit to him, and continues to make me look like I'm eating crow because he had a fantastic game. Not that I didn't want to start him or anything, but he had a fantastic game, and you're going to need to split that time in a back-to-back always. I think they said this was the last back-to-back of the Blues season, but even Jim Montgomery has been splitting time between him and Binnington down the stretch to make sure that Binnington is ready to go in the playoffs. But even if Joel Hofer's getting hot and you're riding a hot hand, like, I don't think it's out of the question that we see him some games in the playoffs too. So riding two hot goaltenders like that is just always a plus for any team going into the playoffs. But we've seen that firsthand with the Blues here over the years. So nice to get that going, and nice to get the win. Sometimes they're not the prettiest wins. Sometimes you don't dominate other teams, but you end up, ahead on the score sheet at the end of the day, and that's really what matters. Every point matters for this playoff race. And Vancouver already lost today, so that's huge for the Blues. Calgary is tied right now currently, so we will be scoreboard watching.
Yeah, a big game all across, and I suppose we got to talk about the elephant in the room. Dvorsky possibly coming up. Nothing confirmed as of yet, in terms of, I mean, it's happening, but not totally confirmed, not like 100%. It's like 75 right now. But Jimmy Rutherford talked about it. He was out of the lineup today, Dalibor Dvorsky, and there's a very, very, very good chance we see him tomorrow. People are excited for it. I'm excited for it. I know our buddy Mike Meyer is extremely excited for it, knowing how he loves his prospects. So we will most likely get to see Dvorsky tomorrow against the Preds. And that'll be a big step with a lot of these Blues young players.
It's interesting too, because like the timing seems strange, right? Like you would think, like, kind of if you're planning for him to be a part of this playoff push, like initially he would have came in like after the Four Nations break, right? And then we get the sickness for Pavel Buchnevich before the game. He's not in the lineup. And then it looked like Oskar Sundqvist was kind of lacking minutes towards the end of this game as well. So maybe there's some kind of correlation there. But nonetheless, like, you get a guy with Dalibor Dvorsky's name saying that he gets the call up, especially with a GM like Doug Armstrong, who we know is always patient with prospects and never wants to rush anything along. Like, that's a huge deal, right? So, and then if you play into the fact that, like, Jimmy Snuggerud's name is still out there, like and the success that the WTF line had today. I mean, Torpachenko is just dangling guys. He's a 6'6" monster. Nathan Walker is like going to break the franchise record for hits in a single season that was set by Ryan Reeves. Like, just crazy stuff going on, right? And when you've got a fourth line that's driving the identity and the energy of a team like it is right now, like I talked about it with Ethan on the last post game, but it's easy to draw those comparisons to 2019 because that's why they had so much success. Where they put that fourth line up against a first line of another team, and then you've got great matchups all day long. So there's a lot to be excited about now for the Blues, but mainly Dalibor Dvorsky coming into the fold in this playoff push with such high hopes. Like, you know, he's the highest prospect with the highest ceiling in the Blues system right now. I feel like as Blues fans, it's easy for us, especially with the Cardinals, like, oh, every prospect that comes up is the next Albert Pujols. Like, it has to be, you know, like it's easy to caught up in the hype of all of that stuff. But with Dalibor Dvorsky, it seems real because of how quickly he's moving up in this system. You know, like if Doug Armstrong didn't feel like he was ready, he wouldn't be slotted into this situation. So to see him get his feet wet in the NHL in the near future is going to be electric on top of what's already happening with this Cinderella story of a team right now. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think right now, based off of, like you said, with Buchnevich out with the sickness and some other things, I think right now, I really just think maybe it's a look. This is kind of a sign for a lot of the younger players moving up too. We'll see some more guys jump in and out. But I think, taking a look, especially like Snuggerud, this could also be a sign that if Snuggerud ends up coming in before the end of the season, I don't expect him obviously to play right away. But I think this is one of those things where Doug's almost like, this is how he expected to how should I say this? Add some weapons in to the team. And maybe that's why that was another thing he didn't make a move at the trade deadline. He knows he's got some younger players that could be weapons itself to a lineup that's already proven itself to be fantastic right now. Like you said, that fourth line. I mean, I was just thinking right before you said it, when else did we see the Blues starting and playing their fourth line so much? And it was 2019. And they did that throughout the playoffs. Every single time they start that fourth line, I'm thinking this is going to be one heck of a game with the way they start, the grit. And right now, I mean, what can't you say about Torpchenko, talking about Nathan Walker? I mean, one goal and assist and a lost tooth. I think they called it a Barclay Plager hat trick on the broadcast, which is fantastic. So an excellent game by him. And overall, like I said, I think that's another thing we got to hand to the Blues. This is not the first time we've seen it in this stretch where they've had what looked like to be a rough start and an ugly game, and they flip it around and still find a way to win.
Yeah, and like you said, I know Mike is huge on Dvorsky. So if you're watching this post game right now, definitely tune in to tomorrow's show because he's going to have, I'm sure, just absolutely loaded information on Dalibor Dvorsky. And I know he's been red hot with the Thunderbirds as well. But final touch on the prospects and the third line and the bottom six and all of that, all encompassing, kind of bringing it all together full circle. If you're thinking about the future of this team and the prospects and where the success lies and how much success the young core of this team has seen so far, like the future of that, right? It kind of hinges on Dvorsky, hinges on Bolduc because he's had a fantastic season and found the back of the net again tonight, not by sniping, but by grinding in the trenches and the net front presence. Like that's huge, like when Bolduc came up as a prospect, like me and a lot of other pundits were like, hey, like this guy might not be a two-way player. Like he scores a lot and is a stud playmaking, but the jury's still out on his two-way, and he's proven everybody wrong in a small sample size so far. So taking all of that into consideration, that third line, right? If you've got Bolduc, Dvorsky, and Jimmy Snuggerud, like down the stretch, able to slot those guys in together and start establishing chemistry, like, I mean, you're looking at the makings of a potential like Blues dynasty, even if they don't make a full run through the playoffs. Like if that full top nine of just bona fide studs or potential studs pans out in the best case scenario, and then you've got a WTF line that is just running guys through the boards and also scoring at the same clip, like it's just going to be gorgeous to watch. So I'm super excited about that. But I did see a comment about absolutely class act by the Blues organization, the fans standing ovation, and the number one star, Pat Maroon. I had no idea that he was retiring at the end of the season. So watching the game, I'm just sitting there like mouth open, like, oh my gosh, this is the last time that he's going to play
He
against the St.
announced
Louis
it
Blues. Like,
earlier today. Yeah, he
yeah,
announced
like
it before the game, told Darren Pang that this would be his last season. And he announced it here. So that was his first announcement. And I'm not gonna lie, I honestly I teared up a bit watching the end of the game, the post game with Jamie, seeing some of the clips, and you can just tell how emotional it was for him. And it's unfortunate that he has to be a Blackhawk to do it, but for the first time in my life, I find myself somewhat cheering for a Chicago player, and I don't hate myself for it, surprisingly, because how can you hate Pat Maroon, all he's done for the game, what he did for the Blues? I still remember that goal, watching it with my family and going absolute berserk in that Game 7. That, I mean, he should get a statue for that alone, on top of everything he did with the Blues. And being arguably one of the most popular St. Louis hockey players in history, to come from St. Louis until the Tkachuk brothers really start lighting it up and, really establish themselves as St. Louis guys. Pat Maroon, to me, is the definition of a St. Louis hockey player, and it was fantastic to see it. And it's going to be a different game with him gone, to say the least. But
yeah, I think it was,
he did for the game was
so happy. And like that's kind of old school, right? Because like, I mean, obviously like Brady Tkachuk and Joseph Woll and Matthew Tkachuk, and like now we see like the product of the heartland of hockey, that what they call it, right? It's like St. Louis is pumping out bona fide studs with its youth program, and like we've seen what like has happened with this city, right, in terms of hockey and the people that come through it and then excel in the NHL. But with Pat Maroon and guys like Cam Janssen, like it didn't have that same allure back in the day, right? So they were grinding it the hard way. And for him to kind of, be one of the guys that spearheaded that along with Cam and along with many others, I think it kind of paved the way for St. Louis to earn its spot in the NHL and get kind of people's attention, like to turn heads. And then next thing you know, we win the Stanley Cup. Next thing you know, we've got the All-Star game here. And I think people speak about St. Louis as a hockey city and a hockey town in a different capacity than they did, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And all of those players are a huge part of that. So yeah, hat tip to Pat Maroon and everything that he's provided to this city. And you can say like, he's had so much success with so many teams, but in my mind, it's possible he never says it, and, it's possible he does. But in my mind, there's no way that any Stanley Cup means more to him than the one that he won in St. Louis as the hometown hero. So he will always, I agree that a statue really for him would be awesome outside of the Enterprise Center.
Yeah, I mean, and you look back to it, this is another testament to the Blues in St. Louis. You look at guys like Cam Janssen and some of the other guys that have played for St. Louis. I mean, how many hometown heroes have come through from the St. Louis area and eventually played for the Blues? I think that's just a testament to the fact that people want to come and play hockey in St. Louis, even if they're from St. Louis. And there's just that connection that is fantastic. And Pat Maroon, I mean, all the other guys, don't get me wrong, fantastic players. They're St. Louis heroes for sure. But what Pat Maroon did, I mean, it's so hard to beat with how he cemented himself as pretty much the St. Louis hockey player with his accomplishments in a short time here.
Yeah. And you just, and seeing all of that, like kind of come full circle in today's game, while also knowing like in the middle of the game that the Canucks lost and that the Chicago Blackhawks had a chance to help propel us on our playoff run if they just, kind of lay down and die. And thankfully, whether it was them getting frustrated at the fact that they couldn't find the back of the net against Joel Hofer, whether it was the Blues, kind of steadying the course, staying physical, knowing that they had the capability to score, even if they weren't successful at doing it early on. Goals come in bunches for this team right now. And that was evident in the first goal with Robert Thomas scoring. Dude, it almost looked like the Harlem Globetrotters. The puck, like they swatted the puck out of the air 3 consecutive times. And then Robert Thomas swats it out of the air the last time straight into the back of the net. Like, dude, it was phenomenal to see, like straight up Harlem Globetrotter stuff. So that was a great way to get it started. And then Toropchenko scores, shortly afterwards. It's gorgeous stuff that this team is doing right now. But like I said, like, I felt like the team for a long time was trying to put together those highlight reel goals and wasn't trying to score the nitty gritty goals. And now with the Bolduc goal and the Robert Thomas goal, like you're getting a full end of the spectrum to see like both sides of it. And I think that's where they're going to find their success down the stretch.
So talking again about today, an excellent game for a lot of reasons. You sweep Chicago in the season series. They're continuing to dominate the rivalry, quote unquote, right now. And even this season, you blow them out in Wrigley in the Winter Classic, which was just the cherry on top. But let's talk about for a second, Thomas. This was 6 days ago.
How does that look, by the way? First of all, the Photoshop job could be better, but
let's talk about this
forehead space, dude.
So after the Wild game, after we beat the Wild, you tweeted this 6 days ago: if the Blues make the playoffs, you will go bald.
Yeah.
And as of right now, Blues are 3 points ahead of Vancouver as they have jumped down. Obviously keeping an eye on the Calgary game as they could jump over Vancouver here. They're tied 2-2 still in the third period against the Islanders. Utah up 2-1 on there. But man, that would look beautiful. I main question I have here is that like the actual size of the top of your head right there?
There's no way, right? I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen the top of I've always had hair since I could remember. Like even when I was little, I was just like letting it grow out. So I guess we'll find out because it looks like this team is trending, not just in a playoff spot, but like they're pulling away, and we'll see what happens with Calgary and Utah. But like that game against Vancouver was insane. So I don't know. Every time I see this image, I get kind of jump scared. So, and I know that my girlfriend's nervous about it. So, but she's a ride or die, so she'll be fine. But
we were right before that. I'm pretty sure we were saying that she was more nervous than you were.
Yeah.
About the whole thing.
Well, I was like, the hair was getting long in general, so I knew that I needed a haircut. So I was like, well, if I just shave it off, and like, the Blues make it to the playoffs, like we haven't had a playoff team here in St. Louis in way too long. And it really doesn't feel like that long when you think about the grand scheme of things with like sports teams in general. Like I'm sure there's teams that have way longer playoff droughts than we do, but it's St. Louis, dude. Like this is a sports city and a sports town. And like, we like our playoff hockey and playoff revenue that comes with it. So if I can, provide some kind of leverage or motivation to get us there and manifest it, I'm going to do that. So yeah, that's where this came from. And really it was after we lost to the Penguins, I was like, well, the season's over. Like this feels like the funeral for the Blues. Like
how
it was a little bit easier to put my hair on the line back then than if you ask me now, hey Tommy, can you shave your head if the Blues make the playoffs? I'd probably tell you no, but that's part of the gamble, right? That's part of shout out DraftKings.
We were talking earlier too. We should see if we could try and get some more ad space on Sports Hub, and that ad space would go right on your freshly shined dome.
If you know a tattoo artist, we can just start scoping something out with the purple ink, and
it'll look just like the casino queen across the river instead of just says DraftKings right on your forehead, and we'll just have you stand across the road from Enterprise, and there's our ad space right there. Obviously, I mean, hey, Ace is saying you're rooting for the Canucks. I mean, we all know you're rooting for the Blues, but at the same time, you're also rooting for that head to get shaved. I mean,
and it's going to be nice. It'll be like, it'll line up with spring and like summer and get the the breeze going through there. Like I won't be sweating as much, which would be, I'm trying to put this in the best scope possible. That way I don't freak out about it too much.
All right, let's talk about this team again here. Again, let's take a look just at today's game. Look at some of the numbers. as we start to come through close. Obviously, Thomas started off with the baseball goal, I honestly would say a volleyball goal. They keep it up 3 times in the air with Thomas finishing it off with the kill, getting it in for that opening goal, and then Toropchenko with the beauty. Nathan Walker.
It was literally like a bump set spike, full blown.
It really was. Then Walker and Bolduc getting again. And, at the same time, too, I think the best way to sum it up, or at least for me, it was nothing to lose versus it's, every game is everything. Because obviously the Blackhawks are out. I think the Jets just clinched a playoff spot as well with this Blackhawks loss, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. I also saw that if the season ended today, that would be like our first round opponent, which bodes pretty well because we did pretty good the last time we played the Jets in the first round. So
yeah, I will say that the Jets are first in the West, tied with the Capitals for the President's Trophy race. So it's the Capitals in front because they have 1 game less. So they're leading in that point percentage department. But yeah, we would be playing the Jets as of now, not having to face anyone in the East, as they are 12 points clear, or I shouldn't say the East, in the Pacific, which they are 12 points clear of Vegas, who is leading that up. But again, this is just another big win. It wasn't a pretty one, and I think we know why. With coming off of a game against Vancouver, they left everything out on the ice, and they followed it up against a rivalry game. And then now you got another back-to-back. This is what, 3rd or 4th back-to-back since the break, which in the grand scheme of things really wasn't that long ago. And this is yet another back-to-back game for him. So I think, me personally, I think it's just looking up. That's all it is for me. And I think that's what this game shows, that no matter how tough it's going to get, because that's the definition of this final stretch of the season, it's going to be incredibly tough. They'll still find ways to win. I'd love to hear your final thoughts here following this huge game and a very good win over those wretched Blackhawks.
Yeah, I know. I keep seeing the strength of schedule being kind of touted out online. I think the Blues were ranked 32nd for strength of schedule after the Four Nations break. So that has to make you feel good, right? It's even if we're going up against back-to-backs or low rest or losing Buchnevich or losing Parayko, all this adversity, Calgary and Vancouver are going, their strength of schedule is a lot more difficult than ours. Now, that being said, even before today, we really weren't getting a lot of help because every time we won, it felt like those teams were winning too. Even they were down 3-0 or 3-1, which is just ridiculous. But that's the nature of the beast and Cinderella stories and not holding position and, trying to claw your way back into the race. So for me, it's just control, for the Blues, your success will come from controlling what you can control, right? So down the stretch, just make the most of every game and go out and win. You can scoreboard watch all you want, and it's good to kind of know where you're at in the race. But at the end of the day, if you're, rear window checking and hoping and praying for teams to lose all the time, that's not a recipe for success to get into the playoffs. You just go out, handle your business, go on 5-game, 6-game, 7-game winning streaks. It's going to be tough for anybody to compete with you. And that's kind of what they've done since the Four Nations and up until now, just go out and handle their business. So hopefully they do that against Nashville tomorrow with Jordan Binnington back in net. But yeah, this team is just fighting through every obstacle right now. If Pavel Buchnevich can't go, you bring up Dalibor Dvorsky, who there's a lot of love there and there's a lot of hype, but with any young player coming in the NHL, there is going to be a learning curve. So as Blues fans, I think we need to prepare ourselves for that and then be, overly excited and surprised if and when that doesn't happen, because that's rare, but just kind of expect that there's going to be some growing pains for him, right? And we don't even know how many games he's going to get in, because I'm sure Doug would love to keep him under that threshold and not burn his ELC. So all things considered, there's a lot to be excited about with this team down the stretch and even going into tomorrow's matchup against the Predators. But let's just, stay the course and keep our emotions down, not get too high or too low one way or the other. And let's keep me. I'll be the one that puts my hair on the line, and then we'll just go from there. Everybody else can relax.
Yeah. Well, they get ready to play the Preds again on Sunday. That is now the second time in less than a week. They have, again, another recurrent theme, playing teams multiple times in a short while. They'll play them there tomorrow on Sunday, and then on Thursday again. But, of course, we look forward to tomorrow. Another Central Division rivalry game. Blues will take on the Predators, 5 p.m. puck drop. Afterwards, we will have Blues Hub postgame with the Blues Hub Weekly crew as they will wrap up that game and get ready for looking forward to this final stretch of the year, coming close to this last games of March and into the final month of the regular season. And one more time, looking over the chat, tomorrow's going to be a slobber knocker. Might be even a kerfuffle, maybe a brouhaha if you want to really put a name on it. But it will be exciting, to say the least. So, yeah, Blues and Predators tomorrow, 5 p.m. puck drop right here in St. Louis if you want to check out the game. Well, that will do it for us. Thank you, Thomas, for hopping on.
Always
Blues
a pleasure.
winning 5 straight now, hoping to continue the win streak, the second win streak in this stretch against the Predators tomorrow. So we will see you next time here on Blues Hub Postgame.